There we are. Good morning and welcome in to Stacking the Box. And Matt Verderam, I got to tell you something. I am in a mood this morning as I'm hearing myself back off the YouTube. Thank you to everybody who's checking out our YouTube stream. And thank you to Tony Correnti for playing Guess What Is Happening in the Football Game on a Monday night game with the Bears and the Steelers. Wow, is that painful. Hi, Verderam. How are you, buddy?
I'm probably better than you. I watched that game. Obviously, no dog in the fight. Just watched it because, well, that's why they pay me. And I got to tell you, that game made me physically ill. For Bears fans, we're gonna get to all that here in a second. But that was insane. That was one of the worst officiated games I've ever seen in any sport. And that's not hyperbole. That's fact. That was an atrocious job by Tony Correnti and his team.
And we'll get to all the rest of it in a second. We're going to start with what is actually going on in the AFC right now. Specifically, we'll start with the Bills and the Jaguars. But did any part of you think the game was fixed last night? Just for the record,
fixed. I've never thought that, but I will say that it crossed my mind that if it came out down the road that they had money on Pittsburgh, I'd believe it. Like it was. I will say this in all seriousness. I can honestly say I've never thought that I've watched an NFL game and thought, oh, the fix is in. With all the gambling money now that is all over the place, there's more of a chance that you can bet legally now on games. Like who's to say an official doesn't say, hey, I'm going to lay down $50K on one of these games. And I can find enough penalties to make it happen. I can find enough holdings and a clip here or there and a PI. I mean,
every play. You can blow the whistle on every play if you want.
Like, I think you as an official in the NFL, you absolutely have the ability to essentially rig a game. Now, I do not think that's what happened. I just think it was awful officiating. But I will say the NFL has decided to open Pandora's box and allow for gambling all over creation, which as someone who enjoys the games, enjoys the lines and everything else, I'm fine with. But you do open up that opportunity, do you not? And I see somebody, as we're doing this live and on YouTube, for anyone who's listening later to make this make sense. Hello from Israel, first comment. Well, hello. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Last time I was there was 2005, Israel. Love to go back. So thank you for jumping in. And a lot of Bears fans would like to ship Tony Correnti to Israel to relearn the game of football if we can. But all right, let's we'll get back into the Bears and the Steelers and the NFL and taunting in a second. But let's look at the AFC, Verderam. Your biggest takeaway from a crazy week in which the Bills don't score a touchdown, the Jaguars get a win. The Ravens barely survive. The AFC, the Chiefs win, but didn't, Patrick Mahomes didn't look good until one last big throw. Oh. It feels wide open in the AFC right now. And who's the best team in the AFC? I don't know. It's a tough one to answer.
I think right now you have to say Tennessee.
Do you?
They're 7-2. They've beaten Buffalo. They've beaten Kansas City. They've beaten the Rams. They've beaten the Colts twice, if you care about the Colts. They've beaten Seattle. I mean, that's a pretty damn good resume. Like that's a lot of good wins. Now, I will say this, and this is why I think a lot of people, including myself, have a hard time buying into Tennessee. Derrick Henry, who was a fan of the show a few weeks ago, we had him on. He's gone for at least the regular season, maybe the whole year. You have a situation where Tannehill is going to have to kind of carry them a little bit. And if you watch the Rams game, you look at the box score or you just look at the score and go, wow, 28-16. It wasn't even that close. Tannehill threw like 130 yards. Like it was a very weird game.
Yeah, props to the Titans defense. Not sustainable.
Exactly. They were great.
Not sustainable. You can't rely on a quarterback falling down in the end zone and trying to wing it out there
which has happened 2 weeks in a row now.
Right.
Wentz did it. It's unbelievable.
Right. Well,
Wentz did it. Stafford did it. A month ago when they played the Bills are going in to win the game, and Allen falls over on a quarterback sneak, and it has been bizarre. Like, listen, Nothing against them. I'm not taking anything away from Tennessee.
I am.
But you do look at the AFC and go, I don't know how real Tennessee is. Like, I know they're good, but I don't know that they're great. You look at the rest of that conference, Baltimore is 6-2, and is the epitome of a team. You have no idea what the hell is going to happen every week. They can win. They might lose. I mean, they should have lost to Detroit, who's winless. They should have lost to the Colts. They should have lost to the Chiefs. They probably should have lost to Minnesota. Yet they won them all. I'll give them credit for that. You win, you win. The Chargers are another team. You have no idea what's going to happen every week. Kansas City is better defensively now than offensively. And the Bills just lost to Jacksonville, and the Jaguars didn't score a touchdown. Like, I don't know what to make of the AFC.
Yeah, well, look, this is what the NFL wants. Week-to-week league.
For sure.
Anything's possible. The gambling world, those who had the guts to say, yes, I'm betting the Jaguars, which, by the way, the public was 80% the other way, taking Buffalo, maybe even 90 by whatever it actually came out to in the end. It's straight craziness right now. But the Titans, look, maybe I'm just old school, get off my lawn, dude. But you can't tell me that losing a guy who was in the conversation and maybe should have been, you can certainly make the argument, the MVP, losing him is at some point is going to matter. You don't tell me that Ryan Tannehill is going to, and the Titans defense is going to carry them through. So when we're sizing up the AFC, I'd be much more willing to say I'll still ride with Buffalo or even the Chiefs. And then we can have a next tier conversation and throw Tennessee in there. And I just elevated your Chiefs probably higher than they deserve. But Adrian Peterson to the rescue, 90-year-old Adrian Peterson. No. I mean, come on, man. I can't get. I understand it was a good win Sunday night, the Rams, yada yada. But I'm not. I am fading the Titans right now.
By the way, as we're doing this, Nick Chubb just tested positive for COVID. So he's vaccinated, so he potentially could play on Sunday. But the Browns, 3 of their 4 running backs have tested positive. So that could be interesting as they get ready to go into New England. And by the way, not to just segue away from a guy getting COVID, it's just we don't know much more about it. It just happened. They play the Pats. Both teams are 5-4. Games in Foxborough. I'm not a big Mac Jones guy. Like, every time I watch Mac Jones, it's like a gain of 4, and then you just hope the hell you can do it 100 times in a row. I know everybody's freaking out right now anyway with him about whether he tried to intentionally injure Brian Burns or not. I don't know. I'm not getting into that. I wasn't in his head. I don't know. But Cleveland beats Cincinnati. Not only beats him, kills him. I mean, this is how crazy the AFC is. I was actually doing a little research real quick on this. The Bengals 2 weeks ago, after they beat Baltimore, were 5-2. They were the number 1 seed in the AFC. Today, they're 10th in the AFC. 2 weeks later. It's insane. I cannot remember a conference this wide open.
And I was very proud of myself this week because I'm like, just in the gambling world, everybody loved the Bengals. I'm like, hold on a second. I can take Cleveland, who beginning of the season those two teams you wouldn't even compare the two. Browns were a Super Bowl contender. Nobody thought the Bengals were going to go to the playoffs. And I don't know where you're coming out on Baker and Odell and the whole situation in Cleveland, but you can't rule the Browns out of the AFC. They're still viable in the mix, right?
Oh God! By the way, as we're doing this,
Aaron
Rodgers is speaking again.
Oh, so, great!
Look out! We might have to shoehorn that bad boy into the pod.
Well, since you just brought that up, look, there is
I don't
conversation
mean to jump around, but
no, that's fine. There's conversation around Aaron Rodgers right now that he has the Packers have lost value on Aaron Rodgers because of the garbage that's coming out of his mouth. It's just not true. No, it's not true.
Come on. Now obviously we're past the trade deadline. They're not trading him anyway. But let's just say they could still trade him, and for whatever the reason, right? I'm out. Or the Packers say, okay, we're going to move you. Like Jordan Love, let's say he was incredible on Sunday, which he was decidedly not. they would still get everything they were going to get for him. Teams in the NFL, they don't care. I mean, they care in the sense it makes maybe them look controversial for a week, something like that. They don't care enough not to put a player of that stature at the game's most important position, right? Like, that they would still, if they traded him tomorrow or this offseason, they'll still get everything they were going to get. What I do think is true, and we don't have to get too far in the weeds on this because it's been talked out to death. Everything with Aaron Rodgers has just made it a circus in Green Bay. And this is not going to go away. Like, he's the quarterback of this team. This isn't Cole Beasley, who's a receiver, who doesn't really have to deal with the media. Aaron Rodgers has media obligations by NFL rules. He is going to talk to the media. And they're not, look, any reporter worth his salt is going to, or her salt, is going to ask those questions over and over and over and over and over. And he can no comment it to death. But I don't know if that's his style. He doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's just going to go, I'm not talking about it. He has, whether you agree with him or not, he has a level of arrogance about him. And it came out last night, it was reported that he's surprised and upset with the way he was received after what he said on the Pat McAfee show last week. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I get that you believe what you're saying and you believe it's right, but how naive do you have to be to think you're going to say that essentially you're taking medical advice from Joe Rogan and like you just thought that was going to be fine? I mean, there's a subset of the population that agrees with you, but there's certainly more people that don't. Like, how did you not see that coming?
Read the room, dude. 12, love you on the field, phenomenal. You want to make an argument that you're top 5 quarterback of all time? I'll listen to it and not have any real problem. However, don't compare yourself to Martin Luther King. Like, dude, MLK and you are not in the same sentence, even if you're going to speak it that way. That was just straight craziness and insulting, and just weird, really. Like, is that you're supposed to be this grounded Aaron Rodgers that sort of gets what goes on in the world, and I don't know. I just thought it was straight bizarre.
And by the way, if you're the Packers, can you imagine, like, you're seeing this, that he's going to speak on McAfee show, which he does every Tuesday, by the way. He's going to talk again. And it's got to come up. I mean, come on. I get Pat McAfee's an NFL player, former NFL player. He's not a reporter or a journalist, but I mean, geez. Like, you've got to think that this is going to come up again. And I mean, it's just, if you're the Packers, you're begging him to just stop talking. Like, anything to stop talking at this point. But that's the problem. He's the quarterback. He's not going to stop talking.
Well,
like, it's a problem.
The other problem is Jordan Love. Did you watch the football game? If Aaron Rodgers plays, how bad?
Good.
Yeah, I mean, how bad does Green Bay beat Kansas City? Bad.
By 20 points.
Bad.
At least by 10. I mean, they would have beaten them. The Chiefs' defense was really good, but I mean, they also were able to blitz like crazy because Rodgers wasn't back there.
I mean, Jordan Love was terrible. And so what do you do if you're Green Bay right now? You're not going to get much more. You're not going to see much more of Love. Rodgers is probably back this week, right? And now you're going to ride it to the end of the year. You're going to make you're good. Jordan Love's our guy at the end of the year. I don't know, man. I mean, maybe he is worth the headache. He's going to be worth the headache for someone.
You know, we've dovetailed away from the outline, which is fine. But I mean, that's fine. It's important. I don't know if you're the Packers, how you trade him. Like, look, I watched obviously that entire. I actually rewatched it again last night, so I've seen this Jordan Love game twice. I want to be fair to him. It's a first start. He's got no reps with the ones. It's at Arrowhead Stadium. It's a very hard place to play. And the Chiefs defense, for as much as they've been awful a lot of this year, the last month they've actually gotten much better. They've made a lot of personnel changes. They added Melvin Ingram. But look, the Packers did him no favors by just calling go routes constantly and forcing him to basically throw up prayers. He was overwhelmed in that game. I mean, they could have played that game for another 4 quarters, and I don't know the Packers would have cracked 20.
Listen, just to be clear, I'm not saying that Jordan Love is not going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. I'm just saying that this is the sample size that you're going to have, and you also have Aaron Rodgers. So that is a very tough putt to just say, you know what, we're good. Let's go New England 2.0. And by the way, look at the Patriots. They've won 3 in a row, and Mac Jones has had moments where he's looked capable. Like, you lucked into your quarterback for the next 10 years. It's out there, but I also look at a guy like Justin Fields last night making plays that Mac Jones could never make. The talent, the ceiling is there for Mac Jones, right? Do we all agree on that?
Mac Jones' ceiling is Andy Dalton.
Right. Which is a good quarterback, by the way. Dalton gets
not if
league
you're
average.
First round pick, it's not, man.
For 15 league average quarterback.
What did Dalton ever do in his career?
Hold on. Yeah, right. But if Andy Dalton,
you're taking a first round quarterback, you better be more than Andy Dalton.
Look, if Andy Dalton was not a Bengal in the prime of his career, you telling me that guy couldn't have won a Super Bowl a la
Joe
Flacco?
I'm telling you that. Yes.
I don't know, man.
Done.
I don't know.
Unless he just had one of those like Jimmy G years where like the team was unbelievable.
Right. Put him on. Listen.
The Bengals had talent. They were good. He couldn't win a playoff game.
Right, but they were a consistent.
We're getting way in the weeds here. It doesn't matter. Look, the reality is with Rodgers. Let's put a bow on it as he prepares to speak. I think it's actually going to be 1:00 Central as I'm reading these tweets. I can't obviously hear McAfee, so I'm trying to keep it going. He's going to come back. He's going to be a great quarterback for them. They're going to win a bunch of games. Everybody's going to cheer him and love him in Green Bay. And you know what? Look, I am of the belief that when guys are on the football field, for me, I think they're just separated from their off-field stuff. I think you have to. Otherwise, you end up hating half your team, okay? That being said, he should not have lied about it. And he can sit there all day long and give this bullshit that he didn't lie about it. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. His whole I'm immunized. And then somebody afterward, I believe even in the same presser, was like, you're vaccinated? Yeah, I'm vaccinated. I mean, he didn't say I'm vaccinated. But when you say I'm immunized and you start talking about, some guys aren't. And, that's their choice. And stop. Like it's a bullshit narrative out of him that he didn't lie about it, that he did. Yes, you did. Which, look, own it. Just own it. If you're so much smarter than everybody else in the room and you thought you could get over on it, like, fine, you got caught. You got caught with your hand in the proverbial cookie jar. You tried to get around it. And by the way, I will say this. The NFL should find the daylights out of him. And not because he's not unvaccinated, but because he flat out on McAfee's show, and I watched the entire 47-minute interview. He went and said, hey, I didn't do it. I didn't follow the protocols with the press or anything else because I feel that it's unjust, which is when he then cited Martin Luther King Jr. and really just kicked off that bonanza. But I don't give a shit what he thinks about the protocol. It's the protocol. And if he's skirting it, and the Packers obviously knew he was skirting it, and the NFL knew he was skirting it, and he even said, yeah, it came up, he should be fined. He should not be, I don't think he should be suspended. He should be fined heavily, and the Packers should be fined heavily because the last year, the Raiders and the Saints broke COVID protocols, got hammered over it. So if you're going to do that to those teams, then it should be done to the Packers, and it should be done to him specifically.
Everybody cares about money, but it wouldn't impact him as much as, like, wait a second, you lied, you created your own rules, you did your whole thing. To me, that's a 1-game suspension.
Okay.
Sorry, dude. I mean, he in essence, he got it this past week, but that's because you tested positive. And I get that there's lots of vaccinated people that are testing positive, but to me, it could have been like, once you get out of the protocol, you're suspended another game. That's what I would have done. Because any fine is not going to impact him at all, and or the Packers, who were definitely complicit in this. So don't tell me they weren't. All right, let's move on. NFL officiating is just straight horrendous. We all love the NFL. Here we are on an NFL podcast. Thank you for watching. We appreciate all of you. Thank you for reading all the pieces that we put out there and giving us an opportunity to be employed, because there's no bigger machine in the sporting world than the NFL. However, watching an NFL football game where a whistle blows on every single play sucks. It's just brutal. And certainly watching the way the NFL has somehow figured out taunting and their rules and what type of look someone's giving, like Cassius Marsh, who's looking at the Steelers bench last night when he was on the Steelers earlier this year, guy that has made his way around the league and had an incident with Bill Belichick back in New England in 2019. In the fourth quarter of a Monday Night Football game, you got to call a penalty is just absurd. They also in that game guessed at James Daniels, the Bears guard, called a penalty on him because they thought that he had made contact, but that was incorrect. I'm only doing one particular football game right now, but there's a lot of it's every week with the officials and the taunting and everything. You can go in the end zone and have a celebration, but you can't do this. It's exhausting. And the officials, I don't know if they need to be empowered more or empowered less. Where are you at on this, Verderam?
They need to be empowered less. Okay. And I am someone who's, I guess, of my generation, the younger, I'm 33. Like I am old school with this. Like I don't need guys taunting. I don't need guys doing a dance every time they make a play. Like, I don't hate it or anything. I don't mind it, but I don't need it. It's not part of my enjoyment of the game. That being said, Cassius Marsh, he did not taunt the Steelers. He was like 30 yards from the sideline. Like, who cares? Taunting should be if you're egregiously in somebody's face. Okay? If you are doing a vile or an obscene gesture, which I know there are people, especially, again, my age and younger, who are like, oh, you sound like an old man. Look, I don't have a problem with the NFL legislating that out. Because if you might be aware, look, the NFL has a lot of sponsors. A lot of those sponsors are run by older people. Like I get that some of this goes back to money and like sponsors. Like, we don't want to see that. We don't want to see guys do. But again, 95% of these taunting calls that we've seen this year are just bull. They're ridiculous. There's stuff that it's so unoffensive to anybody that I do think, yeah, sure, there's the 5% that the guy absolutely deserves it. Some ridiculous thing. And everybody can agree, all right, yeah, that guy took it over the line. The Bears got robbed last night. Now, one thing I will say, can the Bears line up on defense? I mean, they're in the neutral zone like every third play. I don't know what that was. The Bears are just like they have the blue line for the scrims, and the Bears have guys who have like their hips on the blue line. And you're like, what? Can you line up? Can anyone tell them to get lined up correctly? But that being said, look, the taunting call was ridiculous. Then earlier in the game, on the touchdown pass, you'll remember who it was. Was it to Komet?
Jimmy Graham.
To Jimmy Graham. Where they call a low block outside of the tight end box, which A, was not outside the tight end box, and B, didn't even block him. He missed him. And Correnti calls it a personal foul. If I'm the Bears, so that's where Nagy should have gone in after the game and just blasted the crap out of the officiating room, taking whatever fine he got, and the McCaskies could have paid it. Like, that was beyond egregious and might have very well cost them any chance of making the playoffs.
Right. And I don't think the Bears are going to win many more games the rest of the way, and they weren't going to be a playoff team regardless. But that was a huge game for Chicago. Here's a guy who's got a head coach who's battling for his career, at least to remain a head coach in the NFL. And you've got Tony Correnti, who's, by the way, officiated 5 Super Bowls.
Yeah, very highly thought of official.
5. Okay. What Super Bowl is it this year, Verderam? We can do the math on this. It's a lot of
6.
Yeah. Okay. So, we're talking, in the time that he's been in the league, this is a very, very well thought of official. And I've got the pool report, which our guy Adam Hogue interviewed him after the game. Can you explain the low block penalty that was called on Chicago's James Daniels that negated a touchdown in the third quarter? Once again, the new rule this year, this is Correnti talking now, is there should be no contact below the waist to any player outside of the tight end box. And this player initiated low contact to a player outside the tight end box. And then the Hogue follows up. In that situation, is it still a penalty if the offensive player fails to make contact? Correnti, I have to judge that there was contact, and that's what I judged. And I get it, you're not perfect, dude. But you're guessing at contact on a touchdown where it had zero impact on the play, and you've taken points off the board. You've slowed the game down. You're wrong. It's just terrible. Nobody wants it. It's bad on all. It's bad. It's bad for Jim Bob sitting at home who just wants to have a soda, a beer, and eat his popcorn and watch the game. It's boring for him, and and for the diehards, you got it wrong, dude. It's
I mean,
rough.
we can all move on. Everybody agrees, but yeah, I'm with you. It has to stop.
I just don't insert yourself in the game is my point when you
Right.
don't have to.
You don't have to be the storyline of the game. And you know what? That game last night felt like they just couldn't wait to throw another flag. And I'm with you. Nobody wants to watch a game. Like first of all, just in general, and I believe this in all sports, let the game be played. Let it play.
Right.
Just
right.
I can't stand watching a basketball game either. When every time some guy gets touched on the hip, it's a foul, and you're gonna stop. And I mean, last night, my God, the Sixers and the Knicks, it was like a fist fight, and they didn't call anything, which is great, by the way. I enjoyed it.
I didn't see that, but that would have been amazing. All right, let's go to place your bets as we bring in our guy, the great, the incomparable, the managing editor of BetSided. Now Bet and Breakfast, another option for your early morning entertainment. And all your gambling needs, go to WynnBET, WYNNBET.com. As Ben joins us, we've got 6 games on the docket. Ben, we're hollering about the Bears a little bit last night at Tony Correnti. Your Bears got screwed. I know you feel it too.
You know what, though? They got screwed, and Correnti's response afterwards with our guy, Adam Hogue, in the pool report, not particularly strong, considering that there's video. It's almost as if the referees forget that they're on a microphone, that they talk to people, that people can see the results afterwards. So the results didn't necessarily add up with what he said after.
I didn't even mention the hip check into Cassius Marsh, whose name Bears fans learned last night. That was impressive too. But all right, let's make some money here, team. The NFL is just getting crazier and crazier by the moment. Dallas, of course, with a very rough week last week. Who had the Broncos? I don't think either of you did. But they're back home, and here comes Atlanta, and the Cowboys trying to rebound as a 9.5-point favorite with the number being 54.
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity to either go back and look at the Cowboys and try to evaluate what went wrong and how much of it was just Prescott being rusty versus actually Denver having a really good game plan and moving a lot of their linebackers and safeties back and kind of just spying on Prescott a little bit. He made some uncharacteristic turnovers. But I actually see this game going over. I know 54 is a fairly high total, but the Cowboys are in that spot, especially at 9.5. And we talked about this before here on Stacking the Box. We knew at some point the Cowboys number was just going to be too inflated. They were the only team left heading into last week that was undefeated against the spread. The public was all over Dallas in that game. And shout out to our guy, Peter Dewey over at BetSided, who took the Broncos as his best bet for that game. But to me, I think you're going to see a little bit more back and forth. Atlanta has shown that they can move the ball still downfield. Kyle Pitts is a matchup nightmare. And I also think you'll see a far superior performance from Dak Prescott. So I like it to go back and forth a little bit. Matt Ryan got a chance to play in the dome where he's always tended to be more successful than outdoors. So I think you'll see plenty of points. I like the total. I like the over here.
You know, I thought Dallas was going to crush Denver. And then I look up, and Denver's up by like 27 points, and things had gone sideways. And this is the exact same line. Last week it was 9.5, 10, depending on where you look. I think Atlanta's going to cover it. Like, I mean, Atlanta's 4-4. They're not terrible. They're not good. I don't look at the Falcons and think to myself, oh, that's a contender. Matt Ryan played really well in New Orleans last week. That is a hard place to play. It is a good defense. And Dan Quinn knows the Falcons. The Falcons also know Dan Quinn. Like, I think you will see Atlanta put some points up here. I also wonder about Dallas a little bit. They do not get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. I know Trevon Diggs has 7 interceptions. He also gets beat a decent amount. Like, you can do some things against him. I think Atlanta at least hangs in the game. I don't think they're going to win, but I could see this being a 30-26 type of game.
We have on a rundown, Ben, whether or not Dallas is a real contender in the NFC. Just quickly, your take on that?
Yeah, because there's nobody in their division that's going to put up a fight. Like the Cowboys have had enough impressive performances this year for me to feel pretty strong about them. And yeah, they're flawed like pretty much every other team. Just when we start to hype all these teams up, they find some way inevitably to screw it up, like the Bills and the Bucks from a couple of weeks ago. And you saw what happened with the LA Rams. I think all these teams are flawed, and Dallas right now has one of the easier paths to get into the postseason. So I think they'll be fine, but they're kind of just like everybody else.
For Rem, you agree?
Yeah, I think Dallas is a good team. I don't think Dallas is as good as Tampa. I don't think they're as good as the Rams. I don't think they're as good as the Packers. I think they're good. They're good. I don't think they're as good as the Cardinals either. I mean, when you look at Dallas this year, all right, look, the Denver game aside, it's a weird game, fine, right? But there's been a lot of strange games with Dallas. And by the way, as Ben pointed out, and he's right, feels like that's like every team this year. There's been a lot of weird games. I think they're good. I don't trust – ultimately, I think Dak's good enough to win it all. I don't trust that defense at all. I could just see them getting into a playoff game and giving up like 45 points, and that's it.
That was the most painful agreement I've seen in a while on a podcast. That you did not enjoy that in the least bit, Verderame. By the way, my guy George Bliss is weighing in on the chat. Karma's among the best sports guys. Love his work. Good morning, stacking team. Thank you, George. You have tremendous taste in media, and all of us at the Karma appreciate it. All right, let's go. Game 2, Buffalo and the New York Jets. Buffalo losing to Jacksonville. That was the biggest stunner last week. Not even scoring a touchdown was almost a bigger stunner than losing, I'd say. They are a 13-point road favorite at dysfunctional Jets. Jets. Ben, say Jets. It'll make me excited.
Jets, Jets, and I think I found some way to even screw that up. It's like worse than Fireman Ed after some of those commercials that he's been getting paid too much money to do. This is a weird line because the Jets at home against two pretty solid teams, Tennessee and Cincinnati, not only have covered the spread, but also have won outright. There seems to be something in the Meadowlands water that seems to work out for them, with the exception, obviously, of the week before. But I think Buffalo is kind of in one of those weird broken states where I look at 13.5 and I still think that this number is going to climb. But man, you lose a game like that to Jacksonville. I don't know if you're Brian Dable and you're Sean, not Sean McVay. I'm just blanked out on the head coach's name, Sean McDermott. I don't know if you just burn the tape and just say we're moving on, but Jacksonville exposed them a little bit with some of their decision making, and they're not getting Stephon Diggs the ball enough. They really don't have much of a running game other than Josh Allen at this point. And Robert Saleh is still a smart defensive coordinator now as a head coach. So they've had their moments where their defense has really showed up. Buffalo's still going to win the game and win it fairly comfortably, but I wouldn't count out the Jets to keep this game a little bit more close as Buffalo tries to work out some of the issues that they've been having. It kind of goes back to Kansas City a little bit, where we keep waiting for that offensive explosion to come over these last several games. All right, well, they're close. They're taking the next step. And then it just hasn't happened. You kind of have to go back to the baby steps and work on the fundamentals and make sure that Mahomes doesn't turn it over. Like, I wonder if Buffalo is going to get to a similar state here where they kind of have to learn to crawl before they walk and eventually run again.
I think the Jets are going to cover. And I wouldn't be surprised if this game's in doubt with like 5 minutes left. The Bills have gone under the radar because the national story has rightfully been Kansas City can't get out of their own way. Josh Allen has not been particularly good in a lot of games this year. They struggled to beat Miami at home 2 weeks ago. Then they go to Jacksonville and scored 6 points. Their offensive line is a wreck. If you watch the Bills, they can't protect him. And it's made worse by the fact they can't run for a yard. So they're constantly throwing the ball. Teams have no respect for them running. McDermott talked about it after the game. He's like, we have to fix this run game. I don't know if they can. I mean, look, at some point, Colin, we talked about this at the top of the show. Like, the AFC is just such a wide open, weird conference. And that's because all these teams have such flaws in them that you look at it and go, I don't know. I mean, how much to me, this comes down to, can the Bills fix their issues? Now, they're better than the Jets. They should win this game. I'm not saying they won't. I think they will win the game. But, Mike White's actually played pretty well. I mean, can he put up some points? I don't know. But I think Jets cover.
Can I ask you guys a really quick question about Mike White? Because the Ian Rappaport report, try saying that 3 times fast, it came out that just didn't make a lot of sense to me, where they said that, Zach Wilson might be able to practice and might be able to be good to go. But, we actually think it could be advantageous for him to sit behind Mike White for a game and learn from him. The hell are they talking about? Zach Wilson's the number 2 overall pick in the draft. Mike White might be playing well. And if you want to get a closer, more extended look at him, then just say Zach Wilson isn't healthy enough to play. But it's not as if there's an established Ryan Fitzpatrick type veteran that he's learning from. This is Mike frickin' White.
That is the sound of carrying as much water as humanly possible and trying not to spill it, in the sense that, look, and I don't say it about Rappaport, say it for the Jets. Like, the Jets are trying to have both sides of this, where they go, well, we still love Zach, we still trust him, but, maybe he just gets a chance, just, while he's recovering, to look at Mike White. I'm with you. Like, what? I mean, Mike White is a guy who's made 2 starts in his career and finished 1 game. And I think what Rappaport was trying to convey was basically the Jets are kind of saying that, yeah, Zach Wilson, if we wanted to play him this week, we could. But I think the Jets are just trying to carry a little bit of water from up top, which is maybe we play Mike White because he's better than Zach Wilson. But how do we say this in a way where we don't totally crush Zach Wilson? It's a fine line to walk.
I think all you do to save face, and again, comes from the Benny Heist PR School 101, Zach Wilson, this is our franchise quarterback. We want him to get back 100%. We're not going to rush this process. We want to make sure that he's fully ready to go. Mike's done a really good job for us. We're impressed with the work that he's put out. And right now, we're going to go ahead and give him that opportunity until we know that Zach is ready to go. Then you avoid this crisis completely.
Tremendous school. Benny Heist just dialed up right there. However, I do think you're falling a little bit into the where they got picked, who can learn from who type of thing. Mr. White's been given credit, man. He's doing something right over there. There's something that Zach Wilson could glean of what's going on. But let's move along here. Josh Allen, by the way, getting sacked by Josh Allen was one of the peak moments in NFL 2021 history. But we'll move along to the Saints and the Titans. A huge win for Tennessee. I'm fading Tennessee right now, but they are a 3-point favorite at home against the Saints team trying to figure out their QB situation at least a little bit. 44.5 is the number, Ben.
Yeah, this felt like a Carm special, right? Fade the high popular Tennessee Titans getting a big win against the LA Rams in prime time on Sunday night. Yeah, I'm with you there. I think the Saints come back, strong defensive performance, not having to worry about whether it's going to be Adrian Peterson or Jeremy McNichols or whoever they end up trotting out there. You're going to see a little bit more of a one-dimensional type of performance from Tennessee. And really, it wasn't necessary. I shouldn't say that the Titans didn't go out and earn that win because they made some plays on defense, but Matthew Stafford was abysmal. That might have been one of the worst Matthew Stafford performances I've ever seen from him. And it kind of felt like the Rams were feeling really good, really high and mighty about themselves, and then just let themselves go a little bit and need to sort of get back to some basics on their end. But like that was bad Matthew Stafford. And I don't think you're going to see that same type of performance. And the Saints, to their credit, came back against Atlanta, made it a game before Youngwick, who was able to kick that field goal. So I like New Orleans here, even on the road, even against a Tennessee team that right now has the best record in the AFC. Feels like a very ideal spot to fade them. And honestly, if you're planning on betting this game, I would wait, because I think there is a possibility that public money pushes this up to possibly plus 3.5 for New Orleans. So I think you wait on this game if you're looking to take the New Orleans side.
I wouldn't touch this game. I think this is a very weird, like, I can't trust Taysom Hill and Trevor Siemian. I just can't. But at the same point, like, I can see the Saints giving up like 140 passing yards in this game. It's ugly. I'd probably take the under, honestly, if I had to do anything. I'd probably just go, I know it's not the highest line in the world, 44.5. I think this game could be like 2017, something like that. If I had to pick a side, I would take Tennessee. Although, if it goes to 3.5 and you get that hook, then maybe you just go under and you say, all right, New Orleans loses by a field goal or something. I think the line's right where it should be. I'd go under. I think the Titans win a close game.
I think Andy Dalton should have been traded to the Saints. I think the Bears should have gotten a draft pick. But I do appreciate former Wildcat Trevor Siemian getting things done, as I keep it very Carm-esque right now on what's going on in New Orleans. All right, Minnesota and the Chargers. Let's move along here to game number 5 of the week. The 4, I should say. Vikings are getting 2.5 at LA, with the number being 52. Good for you, Minnesota, playing a very competitive game, but coming up short last week.
At some point, the tide has to turn around for Minnesota, right? Think about all the close games that they have found a way to blow this year. The game against Arizona. You have the game against Detroit, where they were able to come up and get a victory. So I suppose that went to their favor. Then the game against Dallas, you had the loss to Baltimore. All of these were just right in their grasp. The week 1 loss to Cincinnati as well. I think what you're starting to see from the Vikings is much more improved defense, like the Mike Zimmer defense that we're accustomed to seeing. And I think they certainly have the ability to go out and score some points. You showed that against Baltimore a little bit, in that early portion of the game. But that's been another issue for Minnesota. Second halves for them have been terrible. And conversely, for Justin Herbert, he's been a very good second half player over the course of his young career. So I could very much see a scenario which Minnesota gets off to a big lead again. I just think at this point, they've now seen it over and over again that either you correct it or you just let yourself get caught up in the fact that it's going to inevitably happen again. But the Chargers are still very flawed. They were lucky, I think, to come back and get that win against Philadelphia. So I do like the Vikings to cover that number here. It'll be a good back and forth game. Chargers, I think, for the second or third straight week have now had that number of -2.5. But I do think the Vikings can go on the road and not really a hostile environment for them and not only cover, but also get the win outright.
I'm with you. I think the Vikings are going to win the game. Look, this is not a great matchup if you're the Chargers. Like, this is a match where, first of all, they're missing a million corners. We're going to see if some of them come back. But Asante Samuel Jr., Michael Davis are both out last week. They might be out this week. They might play. We'll see. I don't know if they can cover Thielen and Jefferson. And their run defense is hideous. It is the worst in the NFL. And one thing about Zimmer and Kubiak, they're going to run the ball. They are going to run and run and run and run and run with Dalvin Cook. There's going to be way more Minnesota fans there than Chargers fans. So I agree with Ben. It's not going to be a hard place for them to play. Defensively speaking, look, I think the Vikings have gotten better. They have talent on all 3 levels. Harrison Smith, we'll see if he's back from COVID, which knocked him out of the Baltimore game. I don't know that the Chargers are good. Like, Herbert's really good. Allen and Eckler and Williams are nice weapons. The rest of that team is kind of not that great. I mean, if you really look at it, it's Bosa, Derwin James, and Asante Samuel Jr. on defense, and a bunch of guys who can't play. And offensively, I love Slater. He's been great, Northwestern alum there for UConn. But the right side hasn't been good. I think the Chargers are like a 9-8 type team, which isn't bad, but it's just kind of there. I actually agree. I think this is a good match for the Vikings, who also, by the way, good on teams. The Chargers are the worst rated special teams unit in football. So that's another thing to look at for field position and whatnot.
For anybody that had a chance to tune into Bet and Breakfast on Monday, our Reed Wallach threw the stat out that Mike Zimmer, very impressive over his head coaching career as an underdog, especially on the road, 32-19 as an underdog head coach over the course of his career.
What is this show that you speak of, Ben? Bet and Breakfast.
I'm glad you asked, Carm. It is a show that not only can you check out just like Stacking the Box here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, but we're on every Monday and Thursday, 15 minutes or less. We go through the top stories in betting. We reveal our best bets for the day. Have a lot of fun along the way as well. It's every Monday and Thursday right here on BetSided.
There we go. Bet and Breakfast. I don't know who came up with that name, but it's a good, solid, just rolls off right off the tongue. And of course, you guys are very entertaining, informed, all of it. So congrats on the show, Ben, and continued success. Let's keep it rolling. All right, 2 games to go. Chiefs and the Raiders, big matchup in the AFC West. The Raiders coming in off a loss. I had loved the Giants last week, considering everything that was going on. By the way, Derek Carr, you're a prince of a man for how you handled the tragedy that was the Henry Ruggs crash. And so, but here we go. Moving forward, just talking football, not to get too deep in the weeds here. Kansas City, of course, getting by Green Bay. This is a huge game with the Chiefs being a 3-point road favorite.
Yeah, and Verderame, I know that you've had multiple mentions of that final play of the game from Pat Mahomes where he scrambled, got out of pressure, made a perfect dime of a throw to Tyreek Hill to close the game. And whether or not this can be something momentous for Kansas City where that confidence, that spark, something is lit. Chiefs also have played well against the Raiders. They've been so good under Andy Reid in the division, but I have to run with this line at +3. This is one of my favorite bets of the week. I like the Raiders at home to cover that number against Kansas City. Two, if you consider this, I don't think the Raiders, they lost to the Giants on the road last week. I think this number is less than 3. I think you're looking at maybe 1.5, 2. Chiefs are 2-7 against the spread this year. They still can't score. I don't know if I can properly evaluate this new defensive turnaround because they've done it against Daniel Jones and Jordan Love at home. Vegas can still score. They've had up and down games over the course of the year. Las Vegas is also undefeated as a home dog. To me, I look at that number and I'm picking against a team that just has not covered with the 2 times they have been against awful NFC East teams. So I like the Raiders if I can get them at +3 at home.
You taking them outright?
Yeah. I'll sprinkle a little bit on the money line for this game.
Yeah. Look, I will come right out with it and say, I think this game should be a pick'em. I do not think the Chiefs should be favored in this game. I do, however, think the Chiefs are the more talented team, so I don't think it's a controversial opinion. But they've been one that has not played up to standard all year. I have no idea what Chiefs team is going to show up in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders beat Kansas City by 20 points. I also wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs went out and beat them 38-13. I really wouldn't. I have no idea. And whenever I have no idea, my cardinal rule is, who are the quarterbacks? Carr has played really well this year. In fact, in my quarterback rankings, he's 1 spot ahead of Mahomes. So by that metric, you say the Raiders. I am going to, by blind faith, I think the Raiders will cover the spread. I think the Chiefs are going to win the game by a point or 2. It's no other reason than I just think at some point Kansas City is going to come out of it. And when they do, they're going to get rolling in a big way. I think defensively, I don't think they're as good defensively as they've looked the last 2 weeks. I definitely think they're better for a variety of reasons that I won't be long-winded and get into. But I think they're going to win like 30-28. I just think it's going to be one of these back and forth games like they had with the Raiders last year on Sunday Night Football in Vegas, where the game went back and forth. The Chiefs won late. In the end, I have to trust the team I think is better. And I think the Chiefs are better. So I'm going to ride with them, but I wouldn't be shocked at any outcome in this game.
You're not the only one, by the way, that has Derek Carr and Patrick Mahomes side by side. Win bet, MVP tally, both Derek Carr and Patrick Mahomes 75-1 heading into week 10 to win NFL MVP. That number for Mahomes continues to go up and up.
Boy, he's been terrible.
I know. But if you see a Chiefs turnaround happening in the second half of the season, especially with the terrible performances out of Josh Allen and Matthew Stafford and Dak Prescott last week, we'll see what happens with Aaron Rodgers after everything that unfolded there. It's Tom Brady's to lose, but if you think the Chiefs are coming out of this and they play an exceptional second half, there is value to be had on Pat Mahomes, especially with the weapons around him. They just need to start showing it.
It's a crazy number. Like, if you're somebody who thinks they're going to come out of it like me, but I don't really gamble, like, you could throw down $10 on that and win a ton. I mean, he is the kind of guy that with 8 games left in the year, like, would it really shock you if over the next 8 games he throws 24 touchdowns and 1 pick?
No, because we've seen it consistently over the last, 2-3 seasons.
And that's why I'm picking them in this game. And again, I don't know what's going to happen, obviously, but I could just see them having a game where all of a sudden it's just he goes for 380 and 5 touchdowns, and you're like, oh my God. And that, by the way, Ben and I do. That's why Vegas keeps putting them as a favorite. Because if they made this line Vegas by 3, all the money would be on Kansas City. And if he plays like that, then all of a sudden Vegas loses a fortune on this game. So they're going to keep because everybody like me is going to sit there and go, at some point, he's just going to come out of it, which he will. I mean, he's too talented. He's played a month of bad football. If he comes out of it this week, they will win this game going away. They're just better. He'll light them up. But you don't know. They are the biggest wild card in football. I could see them finishing 8-9. I could see them running the table if he gets right. But you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen.
Early money is swinging at least 60-40 to Kansas City, just for their record as we sit here and record and talk to you live on a Tuesday. It's a long way to go on that, but right now a little bit more coming in on the Chiefs. Thank you, by the way, to our guy George Ramirez, who's saying hi from Germany, who apparently has been stalking Verderame whenever you show up because he's a diehard Chiefs fan and because you're just an adorable human being, which, of course...
Appreciate you, George.
I
all you want, man. Appreciate the support.
I like stalking Verderame. All right, let's wrap up with...
That's probably not a good thing, but okay.
Yeah, I like your everything you do, Verderame, from the way you mow the lawn to the way you talk about football. Okay, the Rams are out in Rockford. The Rams are one of the worst countries or cities in America. The Rams are a 4-point favorite on the road at San Francisco, looking for a bounce back here. The Niners, of course, people were kind of high on San Francisco, at least for a second, as they smoked the Bears. But then San Francisco came crashing down to earth against Arizona this week. So, two teams coming off a loss, Ben.
Yeah, I like the Rams to get right. They've been a really good team covering the spread on the road this year. For whatever reason, home has not treated them well in particular. Did not cover in that game against Detroit. Think about the game against Arizona where they got shellacked a little bit earlier. And then the game against Tennessee, for whatever reason, getting out of SoFi seems to get them to click. They're going to bounce back. They're far too talented on both sides of the ball. They're going to get Von Miller in this game. I don't know why the number is 4 unless it just feels like a gross overreaction to what happened to the Rams last week. I know we've talked on the show about some of these offenses and their struggles and whether or not they need to kind of get back to basics. The Rams, to a certain extent, may need to do that, but there's just so much more talent on this roster everywhere compared to San Francisco at this point. I really like them to beat Arizona without Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. When I got that number last week, guys, when we talked about it on the show, when San Francisco was plus 2.5, I was, doing the happy dance because I was like, this should be San Francisco minus 2.5. It ended up closing with the 49ers at -4. So I felt like I was on the right side there. And then the Cardinals found another way to win.
Colt McCoy happened.
Yeah, Colt McCoy happened. The connection with another college coach brought it out of him. And then you got the Colt McCoy experience for one game. So I like the Rams. I know that the 49ers will play them tough for a little bit, but ultimately just far too much talent on the Rams side in this one. I don't mind taking the favorite.
Like, what is the argument? The Rams should kill the 49ers. I mean, the Niners just lost to Colt McCoy, who didn't even have DeAndre Hopkins, and not only lost, got blitzed into oblivion. Guys, I'm not even going to waste time. I think the Rams are going to win this game by 20 points. Here's my question. Is Kyle Shanahan a good coach? Like, every year you hear about how he's a top coach. They had the one year they went to the Super Bowl. Okay, everything fell into place, and give them credit. They were a really, really good team that year. It wasn't like they got lucky and they were the 1 seed. They deserved to be there. They almost won it all. Then Mahomes happened. They don't. Like, every other year he's been there. Now, I know he's dealt with bad quarterback play, injuries, whatever. Who else gets this kind of run as a head coach, regardless of circumstance? Like, I feel like every year you look at them and you're like, yeah, they're going to be good. And then, all right, I get it. Injury bug, all that. They're terrible. Like, they're not even a playoff team under him. They're like a 6-win or worse team with him every year other than one.
Here's a question to build off that. And Ben, take this, and we appreciate the time. You're the man. Bet-sided, bet and breakfast. Everybody check out Ben's work elsewhere than Stacking the Box. Dude's killing it. The number one team in the NFL right now that needs a coaching/regime change.
I'd love to say the Bears.
It's probably a fair answer.
Vikings probably. I mean, think about how many.
That's my answer. Yep.
Think about how many close games the Vikings have found a way to blow this year under Mike Zimmer. Like, there's talent on that roster. There's talent on both sides of the ball, and I don't think you can put it all. It's been a convenient excuse to lay it at the feet of Kirk Cousins over the last several years. I think Cousins can be a fairly easy punching bag many cases, and a lot of times he's earned it, especially with his play in prime time. Mike Zimmer has not had his team prepared. The younger Kubiak has had some strange offensive play calling in the second half. There's talent on that team. Like, I looked at the Vikings during the preseason, whether or not Aaron Rodgers was potentially coming back, and I thought, like, this is a team that could really step forward in the right direction. And then they've never gelled, and they've never been able to be consistent. But far too much talent for that type of record, that type of inconsistency. I think the Vikings need a head coach badly, and then I think the Bears are right up in the mix as well.
No doubt. I totally agree. That was going to be my answer, is Minnesota. You watch the games, and I watched them play the Ravens as the game was happening. Like, how do you lose that game? Baltimore couldn't do anything for the entire first half. Jackson throws a pick, you get a muff, all this stuff. And, like, the Ravens can't cover anybody. Like, I don't know if anybody here has watched Baltimore every week. The Ravens literally cannot cover anyone. Like, just drop back and throw the football, and you're in pretty good shape. Thielen and Jefferson and Zimmers and Kubiak are, like, running the ball religiously. First down, second down. And then
Very
Cousins, by the way. Cousins, like, he's been in the league for a decade and has no idea how to, like, check out of a play or, like, slide protection. And I don't know whether or not he isn't the freedom to check out of the play. I don't know whether or not he just doesn't know what he's doing. But that team is so bad in situational football. It's incredible. I mean, you watch, the Vikings Cowboys game a couple weeks ago with Cooper Rush. Late in the game, it's 3rd and 16. Vikings are up by 3. And what do? They take a delay of game on defense because they called 2 consecutive timeouts. It's like, how do you not know these rules? How do you not know what you're doing? I totally agree. Minnesota needs one. Chicago needs one. I know Denver won, by the way, against Dallas. Give them all the credit in the world. Fangio to me is not a head coach. I mean, I don't know that they need to change the GM. Patton just got there, but he's out, in my opinion. Urban Meyer. They don't even count as an NFL team. Jacksonville and Houston obviously belong in that conversation. Miami, I think. I've been a Brian Flores guy, but I mean, geez, that is a train wreck. And has any team ever mismanaged their quarterback more than them? I mean, I'm not a big Tua guy. They have brutalized that kid throughout the first year and a half of his career. You couldn't handle a franchise quarterback worse than the Dolphins under Chris Greer and Brian Flores have handled Tua Tagovailoa.
Ben, great stuff. We'll see you next week, my friend. Everybody check out Bet and Breakfast and betsided.com. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks a lot, man.
See you guys.
All right, let's wrap it up here, Verderan. We got a couple topics just to run through quickly, and then we'll get to what's going on, is how we wrap up the show. Give me your pick here as to who is going to win the AFC North. Wide open, baby.
Like a big stupid idiot, which is true to form. When the Bengals were 5-2, I was like, my answer's probably going to change every week, but I got to take the Bengals. Well, I knew at the time it was stupid, but I fell for it for what I always fight against, which is recency bias. The Ravens are the best team in that division. And by the way, I don't think the Ravens are a great team. I think the Ravens are pretty fatally flawed in some ways. Lamar's just carrying that team right now. And he did not play great against Minnesota. In fact, he hasn't played great the last 3 games. He had 2 picks. Could have easily cost him the game in overtime with the pick. And although it was a hell of a play by Anthony Barr. But he runs for 120 yards. He throws for like 230, 3 touchdowns. I mean, it's just, he's the hardest guy in the NFL to defend. He's always going to keep them in it. Pittsburgh, by the way, is going to beat Detroit this week and be 6-3. And you're going to hear all these clowns nationally start with their pontificating of, Pittsburgh 6-3. Don't fall for that for 2 seconds. They are not good. That team's lucky if it makes the playoffs. Russell, did you see that throw? And I know you did last night. He wound up to throw a deep ball. I mean, that ball looked like a punt.
Yeah, Ben Roethlisberger is not good, but he still has the craftiness that could take the Steelers down to win a football game when they actually have to do it against a Bears team that played a very interesting scheme defensively on the final drive of the game. But yeah, the Steelers they've won 4 in a row, hottest team in the North. The thing about Lamar right now, he's crushing the 10 to 19 yard mid-range throw that he has not done historically. His numbers are way up, and you put that element into his game, and you can feel real comfortable saying the Ravens. So I actually do agree with you on the AFC North here. But it is interesting, by the way. Everybody over 500. So it's one of the more fun stories going on when you look at the divisions across the league. MVP right now, Verderam. You going with Tom?
I am, but by a whisker over Lamar. Jackson's been great. Now, I think there have been more games with Lamar where he's not played particularly well. He's turned the ball over. Like Brady's passing numbers are much more impressive. But with Lamar, you have to factor in all of it. I mean, he's going to rush for 1,000 yards again. The guy's like having a great running back and at least a quality quarterback, from a passing standpoint. And I know that there's always you get crushed as an analyst if you say that he's not a great passer. He's much improved as a passer this year. He was not a good passer up until this point. I do believe that this year he's gotten much better. I still don't think he's an elite passing quarterback, but he's a good one, and he's a ridiculous athlete. So I like Brady by a nose. Obviously, there's a half a season of football to go. But I think right now, my rankings, it's got to be Brady 1, Lamar 2. And then after that, Stafford, Kyler, Dak, but I think it's a drop-off after 2.
If I had to vote right now at this moment for what they've done for their football team and the biggest story, Kyler Murray, you've been a complete and utter game changer. So get healthy. We don't need to see Colt McCoy on the football field. And I don't know, man, best record in the NFC, most unique guy in the NFL. It's been a thing. So I just want to give Kyler a little shine here before we get to wrapping it up here, which Verderam, I know you want to talk about the Knicks, which I am open to hear about. So feel free.
So Knicks, 7-4. They beat the Embiidless Sixers last night, barely, might I add. I will say, normally I use this spot to hype up the Knicks. The Knicks are driving me out of my mind, despite the fact they're 7-4. Defensively, they've been a crap show all year long. They don't bother to guard anybody anymore unless they absolutely have to do it, which I think Tibbs is going to be just apoplectic about by about Christmas. It's because they can score a hell of a lot more now. They're better this year than they were a year ago, so certainly happy about that. Offensively, look, Julius Randle's been great. RJ Barrett, for anyone who doesn't watch the Knicks and cares about the NBA, watch RJ Barrett more. He is developing to what I think is going to be a perennial all-star here at some point in his career. But man alive, they played a Sixers team last night that nobody. The Knicks were up 19 points in the second quarter. This game's over. It was a 1-point lead with 6 minutes to go in the game. The Knicks was just white-knuckling that thing the entire way home as Julius Randle was hitting one absurd shot after the next, and then Kemba had a few shots to ice it. They scare the hell out of me, Carm. I'm not going to lie. They really do. But they're much more talented than they were a year ago. I mean, they just have guys coming out of there. Last night, Kemba doesn't play well. Rose doesn't play well. RJ at 15. Fournier at 11. Doesn't matter. Even against a depleted team, they were able to win the game because they just – Randall went off. Randall, whatever he had, 32-9 or something. So, overall, feeling good. But I'll tell you, man, the East is a beast. I mean,
it is.
Around and it is just. It
is.
I mean, Atlanta's not even playing well. Milwaukee's not playing well. Boston stinks. And you still look around, you got Philly, Chicago, New York, Miami. Cleveland's been better than a lot of people thought they'd be. Charlotte's at least interesting, although they're not off to a great start. I mean, it's just a lot of really good. Of course, Brooklyn, I didn't mention. Brooklyn, a lot of really, really good teams.
So I mentioned, I think, at least 3 times on this podcast, something to do with the Northwestern Wildcats. College basketball season is starting back up, Verderam. I will be headed up. I will. What's that?
Let's go St. John's.
Oh, there we go. Let's get the Johnnies rolling here. I know you don't. Who's your coach now? Chris Mullen left the building, did he not?
It's Anderson, guy from Arkansas.
There we go. All right. So tonight I will be seeing the Northwestern Wildcats take on. I don't even know. I think they're playing Eastern Illinois. But my point of bringing this up is just to give a shout out to our guy Dick Vitale. because nobody speaks college basketball more than Dickie V. And I got about an hour of his time last year when we were supposed to speak for 15 minutes. He was the most welcoming, fun, just awesome Dick Vitale, and he's been doing chemo and doing everything he can to keep himself going, fighting cancer. So Dickie V, as college hoops starts to get going here, just all of us are sending a prayer up to you and your family that you are able to stay healthy and push yourself through whatever needs to be done. And your energy out there right now is just straight, as you would say, awesome, baby. So hang in there, Dick Vitale, college hoops. I love it. Not as much as the NBA, for the record, but I still love it.
All right. Well said. Well said. All the best to Dickie V, who is certainly an icon of the game. I mean, hell, if you're a basketball fan, really the last 50 years, 60, you know Dick Vitale is. I mean, I don't know. There's no way around that. And as we close, I want to say, first of all, thank you to everyone who's watched live and who's going to listen later. Really appreciate it. For those who don't know, why would you know unless you follow me on Twitter? We interviewed Dick Butkus and Bart Oates earlier today. That'll be included in the audio version. If you're watching live, know that you can get that. If you listen later, also it'll be posted separately on YouTube as a separate video. Dick was awesome, had a lot to say about the current Bears situation. Bart Oates was great. Talked about one of the funniest stories I've ever heard about Lawrence Taylor that I've never heard before. It was really a good little bit. And of course, thank you for everyone who's interacted in the chat. To really quickly answer those questions, Ed Ernst asked, can Humphrey win Rookie of the Year? Creed Humphrey has been an incredible center for the Chiefs. He can't because he's on offensive line. I mean, he could technically, but he won't. But he's been unbelievable. I have talked to multiple people inside the NFL who think he literally might be the first-team All-Pro center this year. That's how good he's been. He has been phenomenal. And then, George, when does MVP get decided? That is until when does performance matter? It just gets decided after the regular season. So right up to the end. Right up to the end. But I think most people kind of figured it out by about Christmas, which way they're going to go. So thank you so much. And if you haven't subscribed already to the YouTube channel, please do it. Please leave a thumbs up on the video. Really appreciate it. Helps us get this podcast out and rolling. Also, if you don't subscribe on iTunes or Google Play or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, please do so. And leave a rating and review if you wouldn't mind. Really appreciate it. Some 5 stars. If you leave a question in there, we'll answer it on the next pod.
Yeah, and if you don't do it, Verdam's going to hunt you down, and you don't want that. Just trust me.
Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that.
I don't want that. I don't want to take time out of my day.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for watching. Matt, good to be with you, brother. We'll see you. We'll see you next Tuesday, 11 Central, 12 Eastern, wherever you are in the – it's cool that we're getting people jumping in from Israel and Germany and all that. So we'll see you next week.